Recently, it's a big hot topic coming in the media, that is whether China will ever be able to overtake the US as the largest economy in the world. Repeat, whether China's GDP will be bigger than the US ever, okay? So first of all, let me claim, this is a bad question. This is a wrong question. This is not the most interesting question we economists or other people should be concerned about. And even though, despite my claim, which I will back up, okay, let me give you an answer first, okay, even though this is a bad question. My question is very simple. That is, in the coming decades, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years, China's GDP, okay, will be definitely bigger than the US. Why? Super simple reason. Let me give you a superficial reason and then give you a better reason, okay? The superficial reason is China's population is more than 4 times as big as the US, okay? It will only take less than 25% of per capita GDP for China to become the world's largest economy. This is a simple arithmetic, okay? And it is unimaginable for China's per capita GDP to be always below 25% of the US. This is a superficial answer, okay? Now, more substantial answer. The reason for the recent decline of the Chinese GDP relative to the US is simply because of exchange rate and, of course, inflation in the US and deflation in China, okay? And this, again, will not be able to continue, okay? Look at today, okay? $1 equals to 7.3 RMB. But please come to China. 7.3 yuan in China carries much more actual economic activities than $1 in the US, okay? So if you believe in any fundamental or simple principles of economics, you will a believer that the exchange rate, the market exchange rate will gradually converge to the purchasing power of the currency themselves, okay? So the RMB definitely will have to appreciate against the US dollar down the road. Maybe 10 years, maybe 5 years, I don't know. But I'm a strong believer in this regard, okay? Now, a more interesting answer is the following. The US GDP has different structure from the US and a different valuation system of GDP than the Chinese. Very specifically, in the US, more than 70%, 70, is services, okay? Whereas in the Chinese economy, this number is roughly 60%, 60. And most importantly, the service sector in the Chinese is much undervalued relative to the US. Let me give you one example. You know, in China, most kids go to college. 63% of our kids are in colleges, okay? And you know how much is the tuition? The tuition is less than 1,000 US dollar for most universities in China. Now, of course, there are some private universities which would charge maybe something like no more than 5,000 US dollar as tuition. Whereas in the US, a private university would charge as high as 50 or even 60,000 US dollar per year. And for state universities, I believe, I've been not living in the US for many years, but I believe it's certainly something like 5,000, 6,000 US dollar a year, okay? For out-of-state students, much higher, okay? So this simple example tells us China's services, including university education, is much undervalued relative to the US. So that's why the Chinese economy is now only 60% of the US. Meanwhile, if you count goods by goods, whether it's automobile, whether it's home appliances, whether it's furniture, goods for goods, China is easily twice as high as the US, okay, twice as high. So this is my reason why China's economy will be bigger than the US in the coming decades, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years. Now, my final points, which I really want you to pay attention to. Whether China's economy is bigger than the US or not, this is a wrong question. This is a bad question. This is a question for people who don't think very carefully, okay, about the world affairs. Why? Because what we care what to be concerned is about the actual living standard of the peoples in the US and the peoples in China, okay? So the key question is we have to work hard. We Chinese, policymakers, Chinese economists, work hard to make sure the Chinese people are able to enjoy higher and higher living standards. Currently, 1/2 of the population, roughly 700 million of the whole population, are not living comfortably as they deserve, as they desire, okay? So they are not having enough heating in the winter, not having air conditioning in the summer, okay? And this is changing. This is changing. This is a source of China's future demand. This is the source of China's future development of the economy, okay? So there is a hope for this, okay? So that's the first question we should be concerned. We should ask ourselves whether Chinese people will be able to enjoy better living down the road. The answer to me today is yes. All things indicate that we are still continuing improving the living standards of Chinese people, okay? Second concern we should ask, or second question we should ask instead of the GDP, okay, is whether the Chinese scientific progress in science technology, and also the Chinese progress in upgrading its industry is continuing. And the answer to this, to me, is yes. Okay, I was somewhat trained as an engineer when I entered Tsinghua University as an economics major. 1/2 of my courses were engineering courses. So I know I've been kept up with engineers. Okay, Chinese engineers are huge in number. Okay, the largest by far in number in the world, and also they're working extremely hard. China is catching up in engineering and technology. So in this regard, I'm optimistic. Okay. The third question, which is even more important, is whether China as a country is able to maintain economic, financial, political, and international stability, okay? That is, whether China can avoid major economic recessions, whether China can avoid major financial crisis, whether China's society will be stable, and whether China will not be too negatively impacted by international volatility. To this, I'm pretty optimistic. I think the Chinese people and also Chinese top policymakers are very, very, very cautious. We don't want to be involved in any international conflicts. We don't want to get into financial and economic issues. Okay, so in this regard, I'm optimistic. So to summarize, number one, I strongly believe the Chinese economy will be bigger in the US for simple reasons. We're such a large country. Okay. Second, the right question to be concerned is whether Chinese people will be able to enjoy better and better living standards. Yes, the answer is most likely yes. And whether Chinese industry and science technology will continue improving. The answer is yes. And whether China will be able to avoid major volatility or instability. The answer is, I think, most likely yes. Okay. So any comments, any questions? I'm more than happy to answer. Thank you.